Hi friends, my name is Alyssa. I just wanted to quickly share with you some of the books that I wanted to read in the summer of 2019. I made a spring TBR video and I really enjoyed the guidance that that book kind of gave to my TBR over the last few months, and want to do the same thing for the next few months over summer. This isn't a really hard, fast TBR of books that I have to read, but I have many options that I would like to pick up, a few that I feel more pressure than others to. But for the most part, it's just guidance. I made a 2019 reading goals video and gave some goals to myself, and there are 5 points that informed both my spring TBR and that I will be carrying on as categories that inform and help me pick the books that will be on my summer TBR. So I want to share with you those 5 points, and then I also want to just touch on my spring TBR because I think that revisiting that will help me feel accountable for that video and for my spring goals, which will also make me feel more committed to this video and these goals. So we'll do those 2 things quickly and then we'll get right into the books. So first off, the 5 categories that that I set out as my reading goals for 2019 are, first off, that I wanted to read every book that I own that I haven't read yet. I have a list of books that I'm embarrassed I haven't read yet that I want to work my way throughout the year. I want to read art-related books. I studied art history, and this one's a little bit vague, but I just wanted to keep myself feeling that I'm still reading in that genre and in that discipline. And then I want to read with more diversity in my genres and to read more urgently and quickly the books that I am highly anticipating and feel that I'm really going to like. I tend to put those off for just the ones that are accessible. I want to make my way to find the books that I hear about and really spark my interest while I'm still interested in them. So those are the 5 categories. Before we go farther, I actually will mention, circling back to the first one, books that I own that I haven't read yet. I don't have a lot of books in this category. I don't buy a lot of books, but my goal here has changed slightly because I wanted to do this by the end of the year. But while it's still in the preliminary stages and I'm still making a lot of plans, I, at the moment, have decided to move at the end of the summer. And it's not just a local move. I would move across the country and would probably not bring any books with me. So this one has actually, the deadline for this goal has moved up quite a bit, and now all the books I was going to read before the end of the year, I have to read before the end of the summer, and that will be reflected in my summer TBR, which we'll get to in just a second. But like I said, to hold myself accountable, my spring TBR, I read 11 books. I read more than that in spring, but the books that I set out to read, there were 11. I read all but 4 of them. So just to brag about my progress, I read Tess of the D'Urbervilles, The Adventures of Alice in Wonderland, The Judgment of Paris, The Ice Palace, The War I Finally Won, The Shortest Way Home, and then a TBR art-related book, and I read Wall and Peace by Banksy and The Guerrilla Girls Bedside Companion to Western Art History by the Guerrilla Girls. If you are interested, you can also check out my spring TBR 2019 video if you want to hear more about those. The 4 books I didn't read, first off, the first one was The Secret Diary of Henry Groen. I ended up having a really hard time finding a copy of this one, so I just dropped off my TBR and decided early on that I just wasn't going to worry about reading it. And then the last 3 were The Hobbit, and then 2 that I own, Nothing to Envy and The Feminine Mystique. All 3 of these I'm going to push back onto my summer TBR because I do want to read all of them. So, just before we do that, reflecting on my spring TBR, I feel really pleased and like I made a lot of, I worked really hard to read all the books on that I set out to read, and I enjoyed all of them. All of them that I read, I really enjoyed. I think that I set out a really good list of books for me to try and conquer, and that I did a good job of them. And the ones I didn't get to, I ended up running out of time or else picking up other nonfiction, at least in the case of these 2. I feel like I read a lot of nonfiction the last 3 months. and I just wasn't in the mood for either of these. So now for the books I want to read this summer. To keep this short, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about them. I'm just going to run through them quickly. First off, the first category, as I've already mentioned, is reading books that I own that I haven't read yet. And like I said, it has become more important to do this more quickly. Two of these I've already mentioned, The Feminine Mystique and Nothing to Envy. I also have a book which was a recommended reading that I never got around to when I was in my last semester of college, Ethnicity and Equality, France in the Balance. This I am skeptical about picking up because I think that it's about, I don't really want to say identity crisis, but conflicting issues of identity representation in France. But I believe this was written in 2007, and there's a lot that's been going on with like tribalism and politics. I don't really keep up with France, but post Le Pen, I'm just not really sure if this book is as relevant now as it was probably 5 years ago. I don't know. I'll give it a try, and if it just feels irrelevant. It's also very academic, which is why I feel like it could become a good representation of the time it was made, but maybe not anymore, and I don't know if that interests me as much. Emily Dickinson's Selected Poems. This is a book that my cute grandma gave me for Christmas in 2009, and I feel vaguely like I've read a bit of it, but I found it in my like box of sentimental things, and I wanted to give it a read again for her. And then Catcher in the Rye. This is not a special copy. It was a used book that my brother acquired and he was throwing out, and I know he wanted to read this book, and rather than get it from the library, I just grabbed it from him. And this one comes edited. All the swear words are crossed out, in case you're wondering. I live in Utah, and the used bookstores reflect it. It was funny. Anyway, so there's the first 5 books on my TBR, which are all from the first category of books that I own and that I haven't read yet. The next category, books I'm embarrassed I haven't read yet. The Catcher in the Rye and The Hobbit are the only 2 on that list that I'm trying to work on this summer. And I'm okay with that because I'm picking up more than normal from my list of books that I own and I haven't read yet. So I'm fine with that. The next category is art-related books, and I have 3 here. I don't know if I will read all 3 of them, but I'm aiming to try and read one in June, July, and August. So we will try that. I have On Art and Life by John Ruskin. Ignore the sticker here. I don't have much to say on that. Walk Through Walls by Marina Abromović. This is a performance artist. She is really fascinating to me. This is a memoir written by her, and it is one of my highest rated books on my TBR. So I really want to read this one. I really hope I can get around to it. In fact, I was shocked my local library even had it. So yeah, I definitely want to try that. And then The Brilliant History of Color in Art. This is one that has a lot of images, as you would hope, given the title. So I'm not sure if this is just, really mostly a coffee table kind of book. I don't know, but I think it would be very interesting. The idea of this book, just understanding the history of color, is a really fascinating idea to me, and anything I've learned about it before, especially where like colors were like blue or gold, or these pigments, when they began being used in art, carried a lot of social status to them. They were not just colors as we think of them now, because not all colors are created equal. They are not they don't cost equal amounts to source them. There's a lot of political and social ideas behind the colors that were used in artwork throughout history. I'm really hoping that's what that book talks about, and if so, then I can share with you a bit more about them. And then the last 2, as for genre diversity, I'm not doing very well in this category. Oh, I am planning to read Going Postal by Terry Pratchett. I haven't picked it up yet, but I'm in a book club and that's what we're reading, and I think that's like sci-fi, isn't it? There adds a bit of sci-fi. And then The Hobbit. I don't read a lot of fantasy, so I'm counting that as my genre diversity. And then also The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, I think, is another one that I've picked up because it's one of the highest rated books on my TBR. I think that that's another fantasy book, and I'm really drawn to the idea of reading fantasy during the summer. So I really want to give that a try and see how I enjoy it. Maybe I shouldn't start 2 different fantasy series at the same time, but yeah, I'm going to. We'll see. Hopefully I'll like them enough to carry on. And then this is getting way too long, but quickly to talk about my highly anticipated, or books that I expect that I will like, my predictions for books that I will really like. I have 2 books and then an author. First off, The Mermaid and Mrs. Hancock. This has made the rounds on BookTube a while ago. I think that everyone was reading it at least a year ago, and it has interested me since it was first talked about. I really want to read it. I just keep on putting it off. I've already had it here at my house from the library for like a month, and I still haven't gotten around to it, so I want to pick that one up. Rules of Civility by Amore Towles. This one looks like a good summer read, so I really want to read it this summer. A Gentleman in Moscow was my favorite read of 2018, so I have high expectations for Amore Towles in this book, and I can't wait for it to live up to those expectations. And then Margaret Atwood. I want to read another book by Margaret Atwood. I read The Handmaid's Tale last July, and just coming into summer is really putting me in the mood for Margaret Atwood. The Handmaid's Tale is the only book I've read by her, and I just found her writing delicious, and so I picked up Alias Grace, which I loved the version of this. It's on Netflix, I believe. So I really want to read this one, but I also, in case I wanted a little less intimidating, I also picked up The Blind Assassin and The Tent. So I'm going to read one of these. I may end up reading more than that, but my goal is to read one Margaret Atwood. And then the last book, which I am mentioning so many, is Goose Girl. This is by Shannon Hale, Goose Girl by Shannon Hale. And I have read this before, and I never reread books, but I've just been spotting this on my shelf and feeling like I really want to read it again. I have not read it since junior high. I remember adoring it in junior high. My approach to books now and my reading style has changed so much that I kind of miss the eagerness that I felt and attachment to characters I felt when I was reading books like this when I was a junior high student. And I'm very curious to see whether or not I feel the same way if I pick up this book now, or just what the experience will be. Like I said, I next to never reread books. I don't really enjoy reading books over again, but since it's been at least 10 years since I last read this book, I actually have forgotten a lot of the plot, and I'm hoping that it will feel like like I'm not rereading it too much. That is my huge stack of books, and I feel intimidated and very excited to take this on for the summer. I'm ready for lots of summer reading and days at the park reading these books, and I have lots of them that I'm very excited about. So if you have read any of these and you feel like I need to make sure I read them this summer, or you're excited to hear my thoughts on them, comment down below. Also, don't forget to check out my Instagram. I'm horrible at posting regularly, which is not a way to sell myself for you guys to go check it out, but if you want to, I'm trying to post more often. And yeah, Instagram and Goodreads are linked down below. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in another video. Bye!